Josh Giddey is making his return. Tre Jones, Jalen Smith look like they're making their returns as well. And now the Chicago Bulls are going to have 6 guards fighting for rotational minutes. While everyone's focused on the rotation chaos, Matas Buzelis says it's go time, and it's his time to take over as leader of this team. And Matas Buzelis also says he's ready for war. So we're going to break down all that, plus get ready for the game tonight and more right after this. What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host, There Hayes, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go and get into this content today, y'all. And yeah, man, it looks like the Bulls are going to be as close to whole as they've been since the trade deadline, with Josh Giddey, Tre Jones, and Jalen Smith all looking like they're going to be making their return today for the Chicago Bulls. And this one came from KC Johnson, which then, of course, got spun out to other places. And we're going to see what's going to happen now here. Josh Giddey is joining a squad that has been in absolute flux since the trade deadline, mainly because most of this roster is new. They didn't have a lot of practice together. That should have fixed itself now. I mean, hell, they were at practice on Wednesday when, most of this new information came out. So the Bulls have gotten some practices in. They've gotten some time in. They're getting back healthy. And, while I still don't, talk about this from a standpoint of the Bulls winning a lot more games here, I know there are some Bulls fans that do think the team is going to be right back competing for the play-in. And, we'll see. All that's going to be told on the basketball court when it's all said and done. But it does present an interesting thing here is that now with all this, it's going to be a very different team than what it was when Josh Giddey went down. And, while some of these players are just not going to be here going forward into the next season after the offseason, there are some that I'm sure the Bulls are going to try to evaluate for long-term fit and to see what they can bring to this team. And so when you look at that, that's going to be an interesting part of it. Some of the more interesting pieces that I want to see what they look like next to Josh Giddey is, of course, Jaden Ivey, who's a player that, is a restricted free agent at the end of the season. And by all accounts that we've heard, the Bulls are probably going to look to keep him. Right now, I'll say this, maybe the draft changes that. What if the Bulls, don't get back into the play, which I don't think that they will, and the best player available is a shooting guard, do you then keep Jaden Ivey? Maybe you don't, if that's the case, right? If they draft a shooting guard that they see as the long-term person next to Josh Giddey. Now, with him being restricted and coming off an injury-plagued season, maybe you do view him as, hey, it's a low-cost option that we can probably get back on a fairly scalable deal, and then we can have Tre Jones and Jaden Ivey coming off our bench. So that's still a possibility there, too, and I want to make that clear. But, Jaden Ivey's definitely a player that I want to see next to Josh Giddey, as well as Anthony Simons. And more so Anthony Simons, and, I've said this, and I don't want to act like Anthony Simons necessarily is going to stay here long-term for sure. I do think if the fit next to Josh Giddey, it's a possibility that they could look to, depending on how close they feel like they're back to being competitive, according to AK, by the end of this season. But, to see what Anthony Simons is the type of player, theoretically, minus the defense. Ideally, you want kind of a player that can be catch and shoot and play a little bit more defense next to Josh Giddey. But as far as offensive philosophies, Anthony Simons is exactly the type of player that you want next to Josh Giddey. Somebody who is elite in catch and shoots. Not just good, he's an elite catch and shoot player. He doesn't have to have the ball in his hands all the time. He's actually kind of better when he doesn't have the ball in his hands. He doesn't have to do those ball handling duties, but he can still isolate and score some as well, right? But he's not an on-ball dominant scorer in that case. And so therefore, I'm excited to see that also. Colin Sexton, no knock on Colin. I want to be clear, no knock on Colin Sexton. But you kind of know what Colin Sexton's role is in this league. I don't think you really look at him as a starter anymore. He's a player that can come off the bench, can fill up some for you. I do like how vocal he's been as a leader since he's come to the Chicago Bulls. And maybe you still want to see that a little bit. I think more so Colin Sexton. I'm interested to see what Colin Sexton and Tre Jones can do off the bench with a nice offense-defensive balance when they're going to be out there on the court together. So I think that as well. But that gets us into that logjam that we've been talking about. The Bulls are now going to have 6 guards, all trying to jockey for minutes, and somebody's going to get left out of the rotation. There's just no other way around that. With Tre Jones, Josh Giddey, you add that to Jaden Ivey, Anthony Simons, Colin Sexton, and Rob Dillingham. That's 6 guards. And while I know Billy Donovan is not against playing 3-guard lineups, that's for sure. We've seen that over his time, running the Chicago Bulls. He's not against that. Even with Jalen Smith coming back as well, that means that Matas is probably going to be regulated at least some to the 3, right? They may start Jalen Smith at the 5 and then have Yabusele and Nick Richards coming off the bench. But if they want to go, more traditional lineup, and the lineup that actually was working better for rim protection, that was with Jalen Smith and Matas Buzelis on the court together, with Jalen at the 4, Matas at the 3. And while I don't know if they're going to start that, I think they're still committed to having Isaac Okoro as the starter out there, mainly because of having a little bit of defense. You're going to get some of those minutes there. So Matas is still going to play some minutes at the 3. Isaac Okoro is going to play minutes at the 3. And because of that, if Patrick Williams is still playing too, when we were fully healthy before, Patrick Williams was basically out of the lineup. But now with how guard heavy that we are, is he still going to be in that lineup? We don't know. So, that's the thing to watch in this one. It's not going to be as simple as just playing 3 guards out there. He's going to do that some, but that isn't going to necessarily open up a whole gamut of minutes for all 6 of these guards to play in meaningful minutes. So that's going to be the thing that we watch and see. Do I doubt that we're going to see some Josh Giddey, Anthony Simons, Jaden Ivey lineups? No, I wouldn't be surprised if we see that at all. Or Giddey or Trey Sexton and Simons minutes. I wouldn't be surprised with that either. That's a small ass lineup, but wouldn't be surprised with that either, right? So, but it's not going to be a lot of minutes. Somebody's minutes are going to drastically get cut here coming up, or they may just find themselves completely out of the rotation as well. And that's going to be the part that's going to be interesting to watch. I mean, I don't know how it's going to shake out, and I don't know how the Bulls are going to manage it all. Now, one thing that I will throw a wrinkle in that is that Josh Giddey and Tre Jones, with the amount of time that they've been out, they're probably still going to be on minutes restriction. So depending on how those minute restrictions work, that's going to open up some minutes for those guys too. But you look at Anthony Simons, been averaging 31 minutes since he came here. Colin Sexton's been averaging 30 minutes since he came here. Ivy 28.8 minutes since he's come here, and Rob Dillingham 24. That's just not going to maintain at the level that it was. So that's going to be something to watch out for as well in this as the team goes forward for the rest of the way of this season. So we'll see. It's going to be a very interesting lineup and very interesting game for this team also, right? So, you're still evaluating for long-term fit for some of these guys. Ivy, Dillingham are definitely the ones that you look at there for sure. With Simon, Sexton, Yabusele, Richards, they're all on expiring contracts, and we'll see, what happens in regards to that one. And Leonard Miller, they have a $2.4 million option on Leonard Miller as well. So, I don't expect them to pick that up, unless it's for the back end of the bench, and that may be decided more towards the end of free agency. I don't know what the guarantee date is on that one, but, we'll see. But with all of that, I do want to point out this as well. We got some quotes from Matas Buzelis that I love to hear from Matas Buzelis on this one. He said this after Wednesday's practice: "I always wanted to be a leader and more vocal. I feel like this is an opportunity to show what I can do and try to lead the guys, steer the guys in the right direction. I'm just trying to be more vocal out there." And then he said this: "My game just grows more and more the games I play. The more I learn, I just keep grinding, playing basketball, keep the main thing going, the main thing. Eventually, my talent will take over. But right now, we're focused on teaching the guys new things and trying to win." So I want to throw this in there, right? Is that I get Josh Giddey's coming back, and right now Josh Giddey is the Bulls leader. He's the Bulls' best player. Make no mistake about that. He's better than anybody else on this team statistically, and from just the standpoint of, if you're looking to build a team, having a building block like Josh Giddey, it all makes sense. But you want to see Matas Buzelis, and a lot of this in this next phase, in this last 27 games of the season, you want to see Matas Buzelis take that necessary next step to actually turn into something for this team. And not to say that he hasn't been something overall. Like, Matas has been a solid starter, and at times he absolutely has had games where he's looked like a star for the majority of games, right? Or the majority of that specific game. He's looked like a star, not the majority of games overall. But this is really an audition for Matas in a way, and I say that by meaning this: Matas either way is going to be a building block of this team. And I want to be clear there. He's going to be somebody that this front office looks at his skill set, and they're going to look at the players that they bring in and how they fit with that. That is not going to be taken from away from Matas Buzelis at all by any stretch of the imagination. That is always how this front office is going to view him. That's how they're going to hold him to, and that's what they're going to do for a while now. They're going to do that, right? But Matas needs to start showing signs more consistently that he can be a go-to guy. And this is the opportunity for him to do that. Because I tell you what, if Matas over this last 27 games actually shows you something where you're like, damn, Matas actually may hit that ceiling of what he has, that changes the priority a little bit. Now, the Bulls should still take best player available regardless of what they do in the draft, but a high-level player is coming. Make no mistake about that. And there's no knock to Matas Buzelis, but if the Bulls do somehow luck in by the magic of the basketball gods and get a top 5 pick in this draft, best believe that there's going to be some talk about what the priority should be as far as shot distribution between that player and Matas Buzelis. Now, the goal is that hopefully those guys are growing together. You have a player in Josh Giddey who's averaging, almost 19 points per game. It was 20 before he started getting hurt and suffering injuries, right? But you're still looking at Josh Giddey to turn into, you're looking at Matas Buzelis to take more on of that scoring load because Josh Giddey is a willing passer. He's a willing setup guy. If you ask Josh Giddey, he would much rather be setting guys up, running the offense, doing those type of things, affecting the game that way than him needing to score 20 points per game, right? So, this is an opportunity for Matas to continue to show that himself as well. And, this is a big opportunity for Matas. The deck is cleared. And, yeah, you want to incorporate those new guys. Yeah, the Bulls are going to be looking at working those new guys and seeing who's there for long-term fit. But this needs to start looking like a team that could possibly be Matas's as well. And so that's what you want to look at. And, I'm glad Matas has the right mindset. And coming off the Rising Stars competition where he had a great performance, I'm sure he's amped. And that's what those type of things can do when you're around your peers. And a lot of those guys that were in that Rising Stars competition that actually their teams are winning more than Matas Buzelis for sure, right? I'm sure Matas wanted like that competition level. Maybe put something in Matas there where he's like, hey, listen, I want to know what that feels like. I want that feeling. I want to feel like I'm in an important role on a winning team. And so losing affects everyone differently. And, this Bulls team, we've seen how it affects fans. All you guys can speak to that. We can all speak to that. But for a long time, it felt like losing didn't matter to the players on the court for this team, right? It almost felt like they were just like, oh, okay, well, we tried. Matas is one of those guys who it doesn't seem like from the way that he talks that he takes that in stride, that he takes losing as, okay, well, we tried. Matas wants to be great. He talked about that. He talked about at one point in time, like wanting to bring a title back to Chicago. So Matas is an important piece to all of this that goes on. And I know people like my boy Winton, who's just a net, he doubts everything. And he's one of those people that until the Bulls are winning consistently, everything's going to have doubt on it. But I understand it. But I think at the same time, like you want to see people that matter. And so hearing that from Matas, as far as eventually my game will take over, I loved hearing that quote from him, right? And then he ended it by saying this: I'll be ready for war tomorrow, 7:00. Hey, listen, I don't know about you, but I love hearing that from somebody in a Chicago Bulls uniform. Go out there, young fella, and play your game, bro. Like that's what I want to see from Matas. Continue to play your game, young fella, and go out there and be ready for war. Go out there and be ready to compete. Go out there and be ready to fight. And we'll see what happens. 7 p.m. Chicago time. We'll preview that game a little bit here in a second. But I also want to get into this front office rankings by CBS Sports. They did a front office ranking, and the Chicago Bulls ranked at 28th in the league. They did this in July as well. And so in July, the Bulls ranked 29th. So they actually got to move up in that. And I want to read this little blurb they write about every team. And then we'll talk about the teams that they're around. They say this: the Bulls have now technically moved up in back-to-back rankings. They should not take that as a compliment. The last two teams have just distinguished themselves too much over the last year for Chicago to do any worse than 28th. I'll give the Bulls this: they finally seem to have gotten the rebuilding memo. They gave away many of their desirable veterans at this year's deadline. Of course, they didn't manage to get a single first round pick back for Nikola Vucevic, Kobe White, or Ayo Dosunmu. Many of them probably could have had. They acted faster. They didn't get the first rounders back for DeMar DeRozan. The Spurs got a valuable King swap out of that one, though, and Lonzo either. They got a first round pick back for Zach LaVine, except it was their own protected pick. They could have just tanked to keep it, but they were too slow, and that's true in more ways than one. That's a crazy bar in a nationally written article. The 2025 and 26 draft classes were great. It's a shame they missed the tanking boat on both, because 27 and 28 are not expected to be as promising. Now, you guys know by watching me, I don't think the Bulls plan on tanking in 27 and 28 draft. I think that they're making their move this draft. And also, I would say this: people say that they got a lottery pick out of the 2025 draft. We just haven't seen him yet. Anybody trying to say that Noah's already missed, that's stupid. He's not. We got to see him get on the court before we can say that. But at the same time, most people are killing the Bulls for the same thing. It's the simple fact that they didn't get any first back for players that they moved. And, that's the market. It is what it is, unfortunately. Now, I do think they got more than what the market was telling us Nikola Vucevic was worth. We heard that the Bulls would have to settle for a second. They got Anthony Simons back on top of that second. And that, depending on what they do with that asset this summer, whether they sign and trade him or whatever else, even keep him, we'll see how that ends up working out for this team. But overall, the Bulls are ranked one spot above of the New Orleans Pelicans, which most outlets are still killing them for the trade for Derek Queen, even though Derek Queen turned into a good player. But they gave up a pick in a very deep draft to get that done. That's unprotected. And then, of course, the Sacramento Kings. The Sacramento Kings are absolutely the worst front office in all of basketball. There's just no doubt about that. I want to be clear here. There's no doubt that the Sacramento Kings are the worst front office in the game of basketball. When you look at where they were as being a playoff team that was looking like an up-and-coming team that had a young star in De'Aaron Fox that was playing well and a coach that was coaching them well, you fired that coach and everything came crumbling down. And now you've acquired, a big portion of the failing Chicago Bulls and DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine. And now look at that. LaVine's out for the rest of the season. We've been there. Domantas Sabonis is out for the rest of the season. We understand how that goes as well here. And now you just got to figure it out, right? And so the Kings are like those two front offices have been much worse than the Chicago Bulls. Then you look at the Dallas Mavericks being ranked at 27th. I don't know if I feel that for them. Like, yeah, they traded Luka, but that guy's gone. He's not even there anymore. They do have Cooper Flagg, the number one overall pick. But hey, it is what it is there. They didn't make some of the trades that people thought they were going to make at this trade deadline. They did trade Anthony Davis, but they kept a lot of the other pieces. Kyrie Irving has announced he's not returning at all this season either. So you have that part. The Phoenix Suns being ranked at 26. I don't understand that either. The Suns, yeah, they traded Kevin Durant, but they're better after trading Kevin Durant. And the pieces that they got actually fit, and they actually look like a team that actually has more promise. But again, hey, they're there a couple of spots ahead of the Bulls. The Los Angeles Lakers are 25th in that ranking, and the Milwaukee Bucks 24th, which they've stayed. When you look at the teams that they are most favorable at in these front office rankings, of course, it's the teams that are having the most success, right? Of course, the OKC Thunder are number one, no doubt. Sam Presti, they deserve that. There's just no doubt. Let's not even ask any questions in regards to that one. The Boston Celtics at number two. I got to say, for everything that they traded this offseason to be able to still be one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference, and Jason Tatum is about to make his return back, yeah, they deserve to be one of the best front offices in the game of basketball. The Houston Rockets come in at number 3 there, and then San Antonio Spurs at number 4, and the Cleveland Cavaliers there at number 5. The Indiana Pacers surprisingly at number 6 as well. I don't get that. Especially with what they gave up for Zubac, and considering they're still going to be a losing team the rest of the way. But hey, they did set up themselves for when Tyrese Halliburton comes back, so I understand that. But, the Bulls front office is going to always be killed, and we're going to be killed until things start working. And like I've said on episodes prior, AK will make a good move, and it'll be followed up by 2 or 3 questionable to just outright bad moves. And it's just very hard to catch momentum as a front office when you don't make succession of really good moves. I think he had a good stretch of moves that were more so to clear the deck. That was last year from, the Alex Caruso trade on into the Zach LaVine trade in the mid part of the season. I think that those were some solid moves that AK made, but you then follow that up this season with completely clearing the deck. Why didn't you just do that then? Right? So, and I can understand all of that. And that's just where Bulls fans come at. That's where the national media comes at with this team. And until they start turning that around and do it consistently, this is always the Bulls front office is always going to be looked at bad. That's why I said, and I'm going to keep saying, AK has to have a Ryan Poles level offseason this year to get it done. And we'll see if he gets it done. So overall, I'm not surprised by the Bulls front office rankings, that they earn every bit of the disrespect and doubt that comes their way until they prove otherwise. But as we like to end the show where we have game nights, it is game day as the Chicago Bulls are taking on the Toronto Raptors in their first game in over a week after being off. And this is one of those games where I'm not going to have a big analysis breakdown for you. It's very simple for me. You're having Josh Giddey return. You're having Tre Jones return. You're having Jalen Smith return. I'm really trying to look at how this team plays, the style of basketball that they do play, who fits, who doesn't fit. You're playing off against one of the toughest teams in the Eastern Conference. And that the way that they play defense, the way that they can get out and transition on you and play offense and score sometimes as well, that's going to be a major part in all of this. They're going to probably put C and B on Josh Giddey sometimes to disrupt him. Maybe on Matas sometimes to disrupt him as well. They have a lot of defensive flexibility and versatility in that manner, and that's something to look out for. But overall, I'm really evaluating for, again, fit. What looks like it fits together? What's the chemistry with these guys coming back? Does Josh Giddey look a step slow? Does Tre Jones look a step slow? Who fits in? That's what I'm trying to do. Josh Giddey's there is there to be a floor raiser. He makes players better around him, especially players that can't create their own shot. You now have more players that can create their own shot, but how do you play with those guys? How does that end up making your offensive system and philosophies work? That's what I'm looking for in this game for the Chicago Bulls. The matchups are the matchups, right? But I'm looking for those things. And do you come in and fight and show a little bit more edge coming out of the trade deadline now that you've had time to really bond together more as a team with some practices and things like that? And that's what I'm interested in seeing, and when I'm seeing how that works out for this team. But, that's really it for me for today, y'all. I appreciate you guys really for coming in here and chilling with us. You guys are the best part of the show. I want to hear from you guys in this one, right? What's the bigger story? Is it Josh Giddey and Tre Jones' return, or is Matas Buzelis saying that he's ready for wartime? And if we're going into a truly new era for the Chicago Bulls, how do you think this young core really responds to the doubt that's around them right now? But drop your thoughts down in the comments. Make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel as well. You can follow us at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform that we happen to be on. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullcentralpod@gmail.com. And lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We're the #1 spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that is thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See you right if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.